Hi, guys. Hey, I have so missed reading with and to you. So I am going to continue with So Be It because it is a book so good you can't not finish it. I will be happy to read to you and post this on the social studies Google Classroom, and I will label it with chapters so you can go to it whenever you have time, any time of the day. If you want to read aloud at night, that would be awesome. So it'll be there for you when you have time for it. And here we go. When we left off, since it's been a while, Heidi had decided she was going to go to Liberty, New York. That was her clue on her mama had been there, so she was determined to go. What we do know is Bernadette doesn't leave her house and she has to take care of Mama. But Bernadette was challenged to go out into the hallway by Heidi to try going out. You make Mama try. That's why she can open soup cans. You make me try too, Bernie. Cursive. Shakespeare. That's all I'm asking you to do. Try. Bernadette stood up, grasping the arm of the couch for support. Her legs wobbled under her, but she made her way slowly toward me, toward the open door. I don't know, she said. You don't understand, Heidi. If I go out, if I'm outside, if I go out, nothing will happen, Bernie. Just one step in the hallway. That's all you have to do. One step. The first step. Like when you taught me the cursive A, remember? Round the block, up, down, curl the tail, on to the next. You can do it, Bernie. I know you can. Bernadette took hold of the doorknob, her knuckles white with fear. She stood like that for a minute, her eyes closed tight. Round the block, up, down, curl the tail, on to the next, she whispered under her breath. Round the block, up, down, curl the tail, on to the next. Then she took a deep breath, let go of the doorknob, and stepped into the hall. You did it! I shouted. You're out, Bernie! I knew you could do it. You're out! The best way to describe what happened next is that in the few seconds between when Bernadette let go of the knob and when she collapsed on the floor, her body went from a solid to a liquid. Her legs juiced out from under her, and she fell in a heap, her breath coming loud and fast, her eyelids fluttering, her head rolled backward like a broken doll's. Bernie! I cried, rushing to her. Save me, she managed to whisper between gasps. I stood behind her, taking hold of her under the arms, trying with all my might to pull her back inside, but she was too heavy. Bernie was short, but not small. Peasant stock, she always said, low to the ground and built for business. Help me, Heidi, she groaned. I heard a door scrape open below us and familiar heavy footsteps on the stairs. Xander, I screamed. Hurry, up here, we need help. A minute later, Xander's pasty round face peered around the top of the staircase. He was out of breath from climbing one flight up. He had a bag of barbecue chips in one hand, a grape soda in the other. His jaw dropped when he saw Bernadette on the floor. Geez, he said, what's the matter with her? Hurry, help me pull her inside, I said. He didn't move. Just stood there, nervously, looking at his red fingertips. Man, she's white, like a ghost. Xander, come on, I cried. Help me get her inside. Xander sighed and put his chips and soda down. Then he came back and took one of Bernie's arms in his hands. She's not going to croak, is she? He whispered. I've never seen anybody croak in real life. I grabbed Bernie's other arm and started pulling. One leg of her stockings caught on a nail on the floor and ripped loudly as we tugged. She moaned and went completely limp, which made her feel even heavier. But somehow, eventually, we managed to drag her across the welcome mat and back inside. She doesn't look so good. Do you want me to call 911? He asked. I was terrified. If they called 911, they'd come and take Bernie away. What would Mama and I do? How would we survive without Bernie? I started to cry. Xander stood for a minute looking down at Bernie's still body and shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. Bernie stirred and moaned. Xander quickly knelt down to me, next to me, and we both fanned her furiously with our hands, and she came around. Please be okay, I whispered. Please, Bernie, come back. It seemed like forever before the color returned to Bernie's face, and she opened her eyes. I sat beside her on the floor the whole time, stroking her arm and talking softly to her, the way she always did with Mama when she was waking up from one of her headache naps. When Bernadette was finally able to sit up, I sat cross-legged and scooched very close, putting one arm around her and pressing her head against my shoulder while I rocked gently back and forth. Some of her long grain hair had come loose from the thick rope of braid she always wore, and I smoothed it away from her face, tucking it back into the weave. Done, 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 Bernie. Shh, I whispered. Xander propped himself up against the door and watched. He didn't say or do anything more than that, but it was enough that he just stayed. When Bernie was able to sit up and drink some water, he closed the door quietly behind him when he left. I'd spend hours with Xander listening to him tell stories out on the stoop. But until that day, I hadn't really known him. Luckily, Mama was asleep when the incident with Bernie happened. I'm not sure how she would have reacted if she'd seen Bernie falling all to pieces like that. You know, it scared me down to the roots. I'm sorry, baby. I tried, she said. I know you did, Bernie. It's okay, I told her. I shouldn't have asked you to. After a while, we went into the kitchen and Bernie tried to make herself a cup of coffee, but she was still pretty shaky. Sit down, Bernie. I'll do it for you. Bernadette sat down heavily on one of the kitchen chairs and watched me grind beans in the coffee mill, an old beat-up wooden box with a crank on top and a drawer in the bottom where the coffee fell in. I loved to pull open the drawer and smell the mysterious dark brown powder, but I hated the bitter taste. I preferred Mama's sweet tea. Bernadette drank 5 cups of coffee every day, 3 in the morning, 1 after lunch, and 1 at 5 o'clock. She called it the cocktail hour. It's the devil's brew, Heidi. 1 sip and you're a goner. You're not gone, I'd say. True enough, but I'm a slave to the bean, Heidi. Trust me, a slave. While we waited for the water to boil, I sat down across from her at the table. We won't give up on Hilltop, Heidi. I promise. We'll keep after them, she said. We'll call and write until somebody up there gives us some answers. We will. But I knew in my heart that wasn't going to work. Thurman Hill clearly planned to let us swing in the breeze. When I looked over at Bernie, still pale and shaken from her single step outside, I knew there was only one thing to do. Bernadette, I'm going to Liberty, I said. You? You mean alone? She said incredulously. That's totally out of the question. You're just a baby. I'm not a baby, I'm 12. I go by myself all the time. Not to New York, you don't. I can fly there, I said. Have you lost your senses, girl? People fly all the time, Bernie. All those planes we hear going by every day are filled with people. Other people. Strangers, not you, she said. We're not like them. No, Bernie, I'm not like you, I said hotly. You and Mama are the ones who match. Color rose in her cheek, and her back visibly stiffened. I would no more let you get on an airplane than I would cut off my own foot, she said. Fine, I'll take a bus. It'll be cheaper anyway. Bus or plane, it makes no difference. You're not going, she said. And that's the end of the discussion. Bernie had a stubborn streak that ran the length of her spine like the white stripe on a skunk. She'd taught me pretty much everything I knew. There was one thing I knew that she didn't. I was going to Liberty. Chapter 8 is called More. I didn't tell Bernie about my plan. We both had our minds made up in opposite directions about me going to Liberty, and I didn't see any point in discussing it with her anymore. Anyway, she had her hands full with Mama's headache were coming on a daily basis now. I might have told Xander, but he made himself scarce for a while after the incident with Bernie. I called Greyhound from a phone booth outside and found out two important things. One, it would cost me $313 for a round trip to Liberty. Two, you had to be 15 years old to travel cross country by yourself. As I mentioned before, I was tall for my age, but the difference between 12 and 15 is pretty noticeable, especially if you're looking for it. Getting the money was the easy part. I wanted playing a slot machine in the downtown Reno bus station. Since the machines at the Sudsy Duds only took nickels, I figured I should find one that took quarters, so I wouldn't have to deal with quite so much change. I wondered whether my sweet way with the slots would extend beyond the realm of the Sudsy Duds, and I quickly found out it did. I knew $313 in quarters would be a pretty heavy load, which is why I decided to look for a machine right in the bus station. That way, I wouldn't have to haul the money too far. I took the number 5 bus there, colored my own hair as best I could, and put on some of Bernadette's red lipstick in front of the cropped mirror in the station bathroom. Up close, it wasn't very convincing, but I'd had plenty of practice flying under the radar. Took me a little over half an hour to win the money off the big machine I found near the fast food joint called Tommy's Hot Dog Heaven. I nearly had a heart attack when the coins started chunking down into the bin. They seemed so big and round compared to the nickels I was used to at the Sudsy Duds. It was early in the morning and nobody was around to pay attention, so I squatted down next to the machine and started counting my winnings. 1,256 quarters. $1 more than I needed. That's something to think about. Only $1 more than the bus ticket. I had stopped at Bernie's bank on the way and gotten some paper sleeves to put the quarters in. $10 worth in each roll. It took me a long time to count and roll them all. When I was finished, I put the money into a big old canvas duffel bag I'd found in the back of one of those closets Bernie had made me clean out the week before. I dragged the bag across the floor a little ways to a bench near the ticket window. It was too heavy to drag all the way back over to the bathroom. So I wiped off the lipstick with the back of my hand and unpinned my hair, using my fingers to comb out the biggest tangles. Then I sat and waited for the right person to come along and help me buy my ticket. It didn't take long. She was kind of beat up looking with frizzy dark hair and black eyeliner all the way around her eyes. Her lips were thin and turned down at the corners. She could have been She could have seemed mean in a way, except I had a feeling she was okay underneath. Bernie probably would have found something wrong with what her eyes were saying, but I had to use my own judgment. And she seemed all right to me. She sat down, 2 benches away from me, her legs sticking straight out in front of her, snapping her gum and reading a magazine. I walked over, dragging the bag behind me, and got right to the point. I need somebody to buy me a ticket, I told her. Running away, are ya? I didn't bother to explain to her that I wasn't running away, and she probably wouldn't have believed me anyway. I've got the money. I opened the bag and showed her the rolls of quarters. Geez, Louise, what'd you do? Rob a piggy bank? She laughed. So all you need is me to buy it for you? How come you can't buy it yourself? You got enough money, right? I nodded. I'm not old enough to ride alone, I explained. How old you gotta be? She asked. 15, I said. You could be 13, she said, squinting at my face, but not 15. I know. When I get on the bus, I'm going to ask someone to let me pretend that I'm with them. That way the driver won't ask me how old I am. She smiled. You got a plan, don't ya? I like that girl with a plan. Hey, maybe you got enough to take me along? She asked, arching a plucked eyebrow. No, sorry. All the extra I've got is these. You can have them, though. I fished around in my pocket and held out the 4 extra quarters I'd won. She gave me a crooked smile and shook her head. Keep it, kiddo. Where are you going to go to anyway? She asked. Liberty. I hear ya. Where are you really going, though? Liberty, I said again. It's in New York. Oh, never heard of it. So what's in Liberty? She asked. I won't know for sure until I get there, I said. She smiled again. You're pretty deep for somebody so low to the ground, she said. Come on, let's go get you a ticket. She helped me drag the duffel bag to the ticket window. I had been right about her being the right person, because I don't think many people would have been willing to stand there being chewed out by the ticket man for buying a ticket with all those quarters. Judy, she told me it was Judy with an I, didn't even flinch. She just stood there snapping her gums, saying, Hey, money's money, man, and waiting until he finally shoved the ticket through the window at her. Get lost, he said, as she turned away from him and handed me the ticket. Get a life, she replied over her shoulder. I thought about Judy saying that and about how the way she said it made it sound insulting. But later, after I'd thanked her and was standing at the number 5 bus stop with my ticket to Liberty and the 4 extra quarters in my pocket, I found myself saying it softly under my breath. Get a life, Heidi. Get a life. And there was something about the sound of it I liked a lot. Boys and girls, we can still chat about the book. If you have questions or comments or wonderings or predictions, you can sure message me on Google Chat or email, and we can still talk about the book. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great day.